Grab your coffee, mama. It's time for coffee, clients, and nap time. I'm Sarah Marie, and this is your guide to building a business that works for you and your family. Here, we'll dive into creating a thriving business that lets you be the hands-on parent you want while designing the life you've always dreamed of. So if you're ready to balance business success with family life and make it all work in a way that feels right for you, then let's dive in. Hey mamas, and welcome back to Coffee, Clients, and Nap Time. If you've ever felt like your energy, focus, or even your emotions change from week to week and you can't quite figure out why, then today's Naptime Chat is just for you. I'm joined by Eden of Sincerely Eden, a fertility awareness educator and nurse who helps women understand their cycles on a deeper level, not just for fertility or contraception, but for overall well-being and energy balance. In our chat, we talk about how understanding your hormones can help you work with your body instead of against it, how ignoring those signals can lead to burnout, and what it looks like to build a business that actually honours your natural rhythms. This one's for all the mums who are tired of pushing through, who want to feel more in tune with their body, and who are ready to find a rhythm that really supports them in business, in motherhood, and in life. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Hi, Eden. Thanks so much for joining me today.
No worries. My pleasure.
I'm really keen to hear how you became a mum in business and how that journey started for you.
Yeah. So, would you like me to go into what I do or just the business side of things and how I became a mom in business to start?
Let's start with what you do and then how that journey of parenthood came into that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have a background in nursing. So, I was working in more of like a conventional job before I became a mom. But I've always aligned a lot with fertility based on my personal journey of having struggles. I went on and off the pill when I was in my teens and early 20s, like many women do. And I didn't get a period for 8 years. And so, while I was in nursing and working more of a traditional job like that, I was trying to find my own balance again cyclically because I knew I wanted to become a mom. And then as I was going through my own journey, I got really obsessed essentially with like natural fertility practices and natural cycle balancing practices within lifestyle. And then I guess fast forward to when I became a mom, which was just under 2.5 years ago. I was still in my nursing role up until going on maternity leave. And then once I became a mom, I just kind of felt that deep longing to like want to stay home more and not really go back at least full time to my traditional nursing job. One, because again, I wanted to be around my daughter as much as I could. And a lot of like the shift work and stuff makes that a little bit challenging. But two, I was just ready to step into being more of an entrepreneur and doing something I really aligned with from like a soul basis, I would say as well. Like I said, my personal journey led me to this. And also I saw a lot of gaps in the conventional system working within the nursing field, within the cycle health and fertility area myself. So I kind of was like inspired to be like, okay, now's the time. I can work in and around my family's schedule, hopefully, if things take off. And that's what really like pushed me to eventually seek certification as a fertility awareness educator. I did that during my mat leave. And then to eventually step into this space a little bit more full time. I do also teach yoga and Pilates on the side, which supports my building journey because I am in those building stages. Yeah. And that's kind of my trajectory to here and the now.
I would love to hear more about the work you do around fertility awareness and how our hormones and all those sort of things really affect us as mums and what we can really do about that.
Yeah. So obviously, we are created to have children. Like women are made to have children, whether you want them or not. We were all born having a cycle eventually. And unfortunately, in the world we live in, it's a little bit harder to live in a lifestyle way that promotes balance because as cyclical beings, as women, we run off more of like a monthly schedule, I would say, with our cycles, whereas men have like a 24-hour cycle, you could say, with the way their hormones work. So the Monday to Friday grind is very much directed towards men and how their bodies work. whereas we are like this throughout a month, and our energy ebbs and flows and all of that. And then, of course, when you add in the layer of pregnancy and postpartum for those people who do want to become parents, the hormones just continue to ebb and flow so much. And it's just so important to understand that as the first line of taking action, because when we understand what's going on within our bodies, we can then take action. If we don't know what's going on and we're just kind of like living in this life that we've always lived in without knowing, we can start to feel out of balance or like feel anxious or feel side effects from imbalance of hormones or whatever, and then not really give ourselves that grace or permission to honor that. So, for example, I used to, when I was in my nursing profession and especially in my 20s, I would push myself to the brink all the time. I would work overtime all the time. I would try and go to the gym once, sometimes even twice a day. Like I was, yeah, intense, I guess you could say. And then I would wake up some mornings just feeling so bad. Like I would be like so tired. I physically couldn't open my eyes. And then I'd be like mad at myself. I'd be like, why? Like, why you did this yesterday? Why can't you just do this today? But I was so disconnected from my cycle that I'm sure I was probably in a part of my cycle that wasn't really going to thrive in the go, go, go rat race, I guess, lifestyle that particular time. So does that make sense in the way of how like a man might be able to get away with that grind, grind, grind and continue to go? Of course, they have different ways that they burn out and stuff. But when women continue to try and do the same things every day, especially, like I said, adding the layers of pregnancy, postpartum, we just will eventually crash and burn, whether that's emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually.
How can we then, as women and mums running businesses, kind of use that cycle to really plan our energy levels and our work and our capacity then?
Yeah. So again, the first layer is understanding what's going on in your body. And it's great nowadays because there's so many resources out there. There's apps and stuff. So how I differ to, say, an app is I actually work one-on-one with women to know what's going on in their unique body, because we can use an app, but they're going off generalizations, they're going off algorithms. And some of them are pretty good, but we're never going to get 100% certainty unless you know exactly what's going on in your body based on what your body's actually communicating to you. So I work on the levels of cervical fluid, LH levels, and basal body temperature to understand, okay, what's going on in your cycle? Are you ovulating each month? Do you have your period back yet postpartum? Things like that. And then once we get a clear picture of what's actually going on for this individual, then we can be like, okay, how can we, I don't want to say like change your lifestyle, but how can we live a little bit more cyclically without making it a stress? Because of course, stress impacts our hormones as well. And so we don't want to make all of these drastic changes within someone's lifestyle that they feel they can't even achieve, because that's just going to not bring benefit to them. But it's like, how can we make little tweaks? So if you notice, once we get a clear picture of a chart, for example, if I notice my client in the second half of their cycle has a lot of like events for business and they're really trying to like push a new launch or push a new product, and they're planning all these things in the second half of their cycle, I might say, okay, maybe can you push that 2 weeks forward when your energy is going to naturally be lifting and you're going to have that motivation. You're going to want to network. You're going to want to be out and about and really promoting these things. Because naturally, if you are living cyclically during that previous 2 weeks that they planned it, they're going to want to go inwards a little bit more. That's the time to be kind of honing in on the powers you have within your business. So that's the time to really kind of reflect and just be with it and not do the hustle side of business. Just leave that. It's just 2 weeks. So if that's possible, maybe not that exact month, but maybe moving forward, they can take that into consideration and be like, okay, I'm going to use the rhythms of my body to actually make everything feel a little bit more in flow in business and in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that really does. I think it's quite important as well. I mean, I was tracking my cycle while I was trying to conceive with my youngest, but then after I got pregnant, and then in that postpartum period, I completely forgot just how important my cycle is and to track it.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of women, even being in the fertility awareness space, when I talk to other women, they're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. But like, I don't want kids. So I don't really need to know anything about that. And I'm like, oh, no, there's just so much more to it. Like, even if you're done having kids, even if you're postpartum, you're not trying to have kids, you never want kids, ovulation and our cycle health is vital to how good we feel as women. So, again, if you never want kids, ovulation is something you should be wanting to happen. And I know some people, when you're on the pill, like ovulation doesn't happen. And that's generally why you feel side effects. Some IUDs, you still do get that ovulation, so you don't feel as many side effects. But this is why, like, I do offer that contraception option, even to women who have had kids or to women, especially who don't ever want kids, because you still want to be ovulating to feel your best, if that makes sense. Or you still want to
It
know
absolutely
where you're
does.
at least in your cycle, so that you can live cyclically.
And from a personal reflection myself, I was pushed to be put on the pill straight away after I had my
Mhm.
youngest, and then didn't get my cycle back at all. So it was almost 3 years since I conceived until I got my cycle back, and the only reason that I did is I took myself off the pill to find out why the
Mhm.
heck I hadn't had my cycle. I wasn't breastfeeding anymore. It had been a year since I'd breastfed, and I still hadn't got it back. So
Mhm.
my little one just turned 2 and I
Yeah.
hadn't. So it was actually taking myself off the contraception to say, okay, well, if there's no additional hormones going on in my body, what is my body actually doing? And why do I feel tired all the time? And why do I feel
Mhm.
sluggish? And all these other things that came on as side effects of the thing that was stopping
Mhm.
me from getting pregnant again. So it's such an important thing as women
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
realize how intertwined it all actually is. It's not just contraceptions just to stop you having a
Absolutely.
baby.
Yeah.
It is this big cycle of
Yeah.
everything in that space intertwines with each other and affects each other as well. So it's an important conversation to have. And not many women and mums are talking about it, which is such a shame.
No. Yeah. Ovulation is like a fifth vital sign, I say, for women, just as much as like your heart rate, your blood pressure, your respiratory rate. All those things are so important and prove how healthy you are and how balanced you are. So does your cycle.
I think it's really important to be aware of where we are in our cycle. Like we are very
Mhm.
special beings being women. And we do have this
Absolutely. Yeah.
special cycle that goes around and round. So
Yeah.
ignoring it will only learn to awful things like burnout and the like. So
Yeah.
how in your experience does ignoring our physical needs cost us then in both business and parenting if we ignore these signals and signs that our body's actually giving us?
Yeah. So I think there's two layers to that. And one being like if our hormones are in balance and we're ignoring things, there can still be side effects, like negative side effects. And I can speak, I guess, using my previous example of like when my hormones were relatively in balance, I would say. I wasn't tracking as closely as I am now, but I think I was getting a period then. So I think they were relatively in balance. And I was trying to force being like a hustler every day of my cycle, for example. And I'd wake up some days just feeling like I can't do this. It's- There's that side of things where hormones are balanced. But then when hormones are out of balance, already, and then you're trying to add this extra layer of fighting against it, it can just it can one make it I find like the emotional and mental toll that you can have just being hard on yourself by being like, why can't I just do XYZ? Why am I reacting like this to my child right now? I'm a bad mom. I'm a bad businesswoman because I'm not motivated. Like you can have all these like self-hate dialogues, I guess you could say, with yourself. And it can simply just be because you're not giving yourself permission to relax or like accept that you're maybe in a different part of your cycle that doesn't promote the way you want to be feeling or you are feeling in that moment. So another example in motherhood, I noticed this is when my hormones weren't quite in balance. So I was postpartum and I was really, really struggling the second half of my cycle. I was already working in this space, so I was really aware of my cycle and I knew my hormones were not quite where they need to be because I was coming off of breastfeeding and stuff. And I just lacked that resilience in my second half of my cycle. I was so short with my daughter and I just didn't even recognize how I was responding to her. I try and be very respectful and like treat her like a human being. And I was like, oh, I'm just getting so frustrated. And then I realized like, okay, my hormones are actually like, n- we're in the second half of my cycle where like things are harder in general, even if you're imbalanced. Plus my hormones are out of balance. So this is kind of giving me, not like it's making any of my actions okay, but it's giving me that permission to be like, okay, let's take a step back. I'm struggling. I have needs. Let's try and bring that balance back into my body. And so I went down that journey of like trying to support my hormones through nutrition and homeopathy and stuff. And I did notice a huge difference. But if people don't know that their hormones play that much of a role into it, we can go into that mental state of like, this is like I'm just a bad mom, or I don't have any energy to be a businesswoman. And we can just have all this negative dialogue with ourselves and not really have that permission that our cycles and hormones can give us if we learn how to understand it and learn how to listen to how our body's communicating to us.
A lot of mums actually come into business during that postpartum phase.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very big trend to, I don't want to call it a trend, but it's almost a realization that mums have
Absolutely.
on maternity leave. They want more from life. So they're starting to build businesses while in that postpartum hormones out of whack phase that you're just
Yes.
describing. What would be the one thing you would say to those mums? They they're listening to us now, so they now understand that their hormones are probably out of whack. What
Mm-hmm.
would be the next step that you would say to them? Like, give yourself grace, understand what's going on, but what's then the next step for them so that they don't feel like they're failing in parenthood and business because everything's going on at once in that phase for them?
Yeah. So some people might not want to hear this, but this is such a not valid, but very important point to be made. And that's I need women to start giving themselves the space to just think, to just be. And like, I know it's not a tangible task, but like 5 minutes a day, like before you go to sleep, just be, no distractions, the kid's asleep, like you're not thinking about business. You just need to sit and allow whatever to come through. And that could be essentially the time where you learn what you want. So, why are you doing this business? Yes, you're doing it to stay home with your daughter, but like it just allows you that extra time to really hone in on like your why. And then learning that will give you the confidence and the motivation to move forward with it without feeling like you're doing something because it worked for so and so. And so, yes, you want to stay home with your kids, but you need to really get down to like the nitty gritty of like, what do you want in your life? And I can use myself as an example because I did plan to go back to nursing when I was on maternity leave, just part time. And I had like multiple moments of like feeling my old self die essentially, which we all do as moms. Like we're kind of mourning our old self. But I was really confronted by the fact that like I always contribute financially. I always was like 50% of the bills or 40% of the bills. But now, even though I was only planning to go back part-time nursing wise, I don't even want to do that. I just want to focus on being a mom and then educating other women on how to live cyclically because I know how important it is as a mom, and someone who doesn't want to be a mom can benefit. And so I really like use those moments of stillness to kind of download like, okay, what does that mean going forward? And there was a lot of fear and there was a lot of self-doubt, but I I got so sure and so clear on what I wanted. And I guess that's how I'm wanting to wrap this up is like that clarity needs to be instilled in your mind. And then you can do anything essentially. And then that extra layer of knowing your cycle, as we talked about earlier, you can use the ebbs and flows of your energy and your creative part of your cycle, and also the time where you can network better and the time to really hone in on your skills. You can use that in your business as well by giving yourself that space to be like, okay, where am I at in my cycle? So it's those little moments of space. And again, I know it's not tangible, but it's a game changer.
I think that's so important as well. I always like to say take time for you, whatever that is. Is it sitting with a hot cup of coffee
Mhm.
with no children around you? Is it like reading a book? Is it just sitting quietly, meditating, even if your meditation is just an empty mind, if you're not true meditator, believer?
Yeah.
Always taking those couple of moments. And I think that feeds quite nicely into what you're saying, like just sit in the quiet, sit in the peace,
Yeah.
sit in the just in the moment and just be. I would
Yeah.
really love to hear more
Yeah.
about your journey when you left secure work to start your business, because that can be really
Mm.
scary and confronting for mums. And I think my listeners are really going to relate to hearing how you navigated that and how that felt for you and how you moved through that and what that's been like for you.
Yeah. And I mean, I was kind of speaking a little bit to that just prior, but I would love to elaborate on what I was saying because the feeling, especially I find as women, we go into, well, we're pregnant and then we have the baby and we have this like preconceived idea of what life's going to look like. And as you said, like that's the period when a lot of women are like, wait, I actually want to be home more. So I'm going to start a business instead. But we don't kind of foresee that. And it's hard to really even prepare anyone for that because until you're in it, you don't understand. And I mean, I'd have friends who went through the same thing prior to me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be fine just going back to my nursing role. Like, I'll work part time. It's all good. And then when it happened, I was like, wait, whoa, okay, I get it now. But as I said, it was really like I had to, I was just kind of going through the motions initially because I felt like I had no other option. And it wasn't until I like sat back again, giving myself that space to journal. And again, it doesn't have to be journaling, but just giving yourself that space to be like, okay, what do I actually want? And why am I doing what I'm doing now? Is it because that's what I want? Or am I just doing it because that's what I think I should be doing and what everyone else, I guess, expects me to do? But I guess the extra layer of that is, yeah, that strong urge when you become a mom to want to stay home, matched with me like wanting to help other women and matched with me wanting to have an income, but like work it around my family schedule and like prioritize my family first. It was a lot to deal with because I was so used to secure work. And even now, like I have had to rebudget everything and it took a lot of sacrifice. But I mean, as moms, like we're kind of used to that sacrifice, or at least we start to get used to it. Like we sacrifice our bodies, we sacrifice our sleep. Like that becomes kind of our new job almost in a sense. And so I kind of just started to apply that to like my lifestyle as well. And I'm like, you know what? I can go without shopping as much as I used to, like the barista coffees all the time. It's not easy. And I'm not saying any of this was easy. I mean, it is very first world, but we get comfortable with the way we live our life. And I'm like, in those moments of clarity, I was like, these things don't matter to me and won't at the end of my life. And so, what can I let go of to step into this new me? It came with a lot of tears, a lot of guilt, even a lot of tough conversations with my partner because it did mean like he kind of had to become the sole provider, at least temporarily, as things built. And I am lucky in that I do have those other skills of yoga and Pilates teaching because I do that on the side as well to kind of fill the gaps. But I feel like if you really want something, and as I said, if you get that clarity and that confidence and you know your why, you will make it happen. There was a time when I was about to send my daughter to daycare and I'm like, we got to pull her out. Like I just am not there's another way and I'm going to make it work. And again, if you want it that much and you have that clarity, you'll make it work. And that's where we're at now. And if you would have asked me this time last year if I foresaw this, I would absolutely not have, but I know moms will get it.
Yeah, I think they absolutely will, because it's that balance between the secure income coming in where you're working a 40-hour week to create that income or that quality time, and what is more important in your world in this very moment while they're young. Is it having flexible
Exactly.
work
Yeah.
that works around the reality of being a stay-at-home mum and, looking after your children? Like,
Hmm.
where does that fit for you as a mum? And there's no right or wrong answer. So I don't want my listeners to think that if they are
Totally.
working 40-hour weeks and have their children in care, that's not wrong. Don't ever think that's wrong. But if your choice is to spend that time and
No.
be with your kids, and then that's what you do, you make those sacrifices or adjustments in your lifestyle, as you said, because that's where your priorities lie and that's where you want to be. So I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it and such an important chat to have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I should, just to go off of what you said about how like my way isn't the superior way, like even working moms, like full-time working moms who have their kids in care, like your clarity will still benefit you because you'll know exactly that like that's what you want. And or you might want to sacrifice something else, not necessarily work or your income, but just within anything in life, business, parenthood aside, like if you just give yourself that time, that little bit of time to be like, okay, am I doing this because this is what I want and this is best for my family? Or am I doing this because I feel like I have to and there's no other way? And I just like to remind people there's always choice. Sometimes we do, again, have to sacrifice things, and we often do. And we don't like that. And that's okay if we don't want to sacrifice. And that's giving us that clarity as well. I have friends who love buying a lot of fancy clothes and they're like, I'm happy. And I'm like, that's perfect then, you know?
So many women push and push themselves and sacrifice their health, whether they are in work or in business, to just keep
Mhm.
going and do more. Like this supermum mentality, we've got to do everything, we've got to be everything. In your
Mm.
experience and the way that you support people, what can actually be done differently for women around that to sort of help them not burn out, not push themselves so far to try and be everything to everyone?
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? I struggled immensely with that as well. There's just, I mean, especially with like the online world, there's just such a culture of like women have to wear so many hats and we have to be perfect in each role. And again, if we go back to like our cycles, that's just not realistic, or it's just not realistic every day of the month. We might be able to wear many hats for the first part of our cycle when our hormones are a little bit more, I guess, energetic in that way. But to expect to do that every day, and we've touched on this a couple times, it's not maintainable and there will be a breaking point. And I think that's what a lot of women eventually do experience. And so again, it all comes back to that learning piece of like learning your cycle and how to optimize it. It doesn't mean you can't be like thriving businesswoman. I know a lot of women who just choose when they're going to optimize their energy and their offerings and events and things like that. And then other times when they allow themselves to slow down. And that's going to make for a maintainable business flow, a maintainable lifestyle. We're all about maintainable here. You might be able to get away with hustling every day of the month for a short while, but like I said, eventually, as I did, you hit a breaking point, and it's just yeah, without extra support, I should mention, which is another thing that lacks in our day and age, is that community. And so if you don't have that community around you, that support, then it can just make this even harder. And so I would say optimizing that as well, like help, but also giving yourself that grace for part of your cycle, that second half of your cycle leading up to your period, especially like if you don't feel like you can be hustling or making all these plans or doing all this stuff for your business, that is okay. And that's actually very natural.
For my listeners who have just listened to us chat and just gone, oh my goodness, I need to work out what the heck's going on with my cycle. I'm trying to do all the things
Mm,
all the time and I
yeah.
just feel completely burnt out. I know you've mentioned a few times start of the cycle, lots of energy towards the end, low. Would the next practical step
Mhm.
be for them to just really sort of track things for a month for themselves, kind of see where those energy levels sit to kind of get a really good grasp on it? Or what would be the practical next step for them?
Yeah. So, like I said, there's kind of two layers to that. So, if someone has like a very normal cycle, their hormones are quite imbalanced, then it'll become pretty obvious to them if they do start to track. I guess, like, if you're not working with someone like me, just using an app, you can kind of, the app will sort of start to it. I would say it would take more than a month. Usually, I recommend 2 to 3 plus months for either an app or for yourself or me to really gain an understanding of what's happening in your body. Because a one off cycle is not going to give you much information. But yeah, start to track and then just again take that space to be like, okay, what is my energy actually feeling today? And does that correspond with how I should be feeling? So, as we talked about in the first half of our cycles, when there's a lot more energy building up into ovulation, and then once ovulation's happened, That second half is kind of when our body we want to go inward a little bit more. We want to dial things back a little bit more. It doesn't have to be drastic. And that's what I like to also mention is like, I think some people think of cycle syncing as like, okay, I'm going to like run a marathon every day for the first half. And the second half, I'm just going to sleep. And it's like, okay, no, especially we want to go maintainable here. Any extremes are not going to work. So yes, build upon that first half, maybe do a few extra things. On that second half, you can still do things, but just dial it back slightly. It's those little shifts that are going to make it a lasting impact. And so that's, again, assuming that your cycle is normal and in balance, I should say. If it's suboptimal or there's things out of balance, it is a little bit harder to understand because the first half of your cycle, if you're out of balance, you could also be feeling tired. You could just be feeling tired every day. And so that makes it really hard when you're trying to learn your cycle on your own and learn your energy flows on your own to really like connect the two. If you're like, well, she said I should be feeling energetic. I'm not very energetic today. And of course, motherhood and business adds extra layers to that when you're sleeping less and you're trying to do all these things and wear all these hats. And so that's why I do what I do. I give you that education piece, and I also work one-on-one to make sure you know, and we both know based on what your body's communicating. So I think I touched on this earlier, but we go off of cervical fluid and LH levels in the body, as well as basal body temperature. If that particular client wants to do the temperature, that's kind of an extra layer to things. And that's basically your body literally showing you what's happening in it. It's just we were never taught how to understand and read those things. In fact, I feel like cervical fluid is still so taboo. And when I was growing up, I was like, ew, what is this stuff? Like, I don't want this. Like, get it away. But if we actually learned what it meant, we would probably just have that reframe of like, not embracing it because it is still a bit weird, but like being like, okay, well, cool. This is telling me that this is where I'm at in my cycle. And now I know that. And now I know because I'm at this point, I should have more energy. And if I don't have more energy, maybe my cycles or my hormones are out of balance. So many layers to it. But again, just the ripple effect of knowing what's going on in your body as a woman cyclically, it just moves to every area of your life, including motherhood and business.
What other ways that people can actually work with you? You mentioned they're one-on-one and these things that you do, but what are, say if I reached out to you and said, look, I want to work with you, Eden, what are the actual practical ways that I could do that?
Yeah. So on my website, I have I always recommend booking a consult. They're always free, and that's essentially a 30-minute chat for me to really understand. Okay, what do you need from me? What are your goals in the way of health? So some women come to me because they simply just want to learn their cycle for this exact reason. They want to know how to live cyclically, but they don't want to just go off of like an app that may or may not be accurate. They want to know exactly what's happening in their body, if their hormones are imbalanced, and then either working to bring balance or if they're imbalanced, working to support where they're at in their body and their hormones. And then other people come to me because they want to prevent pregnancy naturally, or they want to transition off of conventional methods of birth control. Because when you know how to track your cycle, especially as detailed and as in-depth as I educate and show women how to do, you can actually use it as a form of natural contraception. And it's got a 99% success rate. It's evidence-based. It's all of the things. But women don't know they have that option. And so a lot of people are just going the conventional route. And some people are fine with it, but others who struggle with side effects and really don't want to be using it just don't know they have this extra option. And that is safe and effective. Because I do have a lot of people being like, well, I would do that, but it's not really going to work for me. But it does. It's very historically used. And if you do it right, and that's where I come in, I always recommend a minimum 3 months working with me if the family planning side of things is what you're trying to achieve. And then there's the pregnancy layer on top of that. So women who are struggling to conceive can come to me as well. And we can be like, take a fine tooth comb to their cycle, optimize their fertile window. So many women don't even know they have a fertile window, which boggles my mind. But I guess being in this space, I kind of forget what the general public actually knows. And again, why it's important that I do what I do. So those are kind of the reasons that people would come to me, but we talk about those goals in the free consult. So going either through my Instagram or on my website, you can book a free consult and then we chat. We go through your health history, your cycle history, what your goals are, whether you want kids, you don't want kids, all of the things.
Perfect. Do you want to drop your website details and your social handles right now for me?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me at Sincerely Eden on Instagram. So SINCERELYEDEN. And then I'm at www.sincerelyeden.com is my website. And so there's lots of information in there. I do 3 levels of program. So it's always one-on-one work that I offer at the moment. I do also do group events, though. So those are kind of inconsistently popping up. I do have one actually coming up November 15th. Super affordable, which is really cool. You can see that on my Instagram coming up soon. I'll be announcing it. And I also have an email list that you can subscribe to through my Instagram or website. And I have a free fertility awareness ebook on there that can give you a little bit of tracking information. So again, going back to your question of like, how can women learn how to track? That's a good resource and it's totally free. And then in my newsletter, I do usually send one once a month and it's not very spammy. So it's another good option if you want to just learn a little bit more about it without having to jump into it full force.
Perfect. I'll drop the links to all those things in the show notes. Now, before we wrap up, I always like to finish up these Naptime Chat conversations with the question, if you could give one piece of advice to a new mum starting out in business, not even a new mum, just a mum in general, starting out in business, what would your piece of advice be?
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably going to repeat myself, but it is just like getting that clarity and allowing yourself that space and connecting to your body. So like giving yourself those moments of space away from the noise, away from distractions of any kind, your husband, your partner, your kids, social media, any distraction, and just sit and be like, okay, how am I feeling? Am I living in a way that I want to be living? The how am I feeling side of things, you can also tie into like your hormones. Like, are my hormones imbalanced, do I think? Or do I think I have side effects? It just gives you that time to focus on like, okay, how am I feeling? And then ideas come through for business. And this is when you get that clarity and your why, and you can really propel yourself forward in motherhood and business, even in your personal life as well.
I love that. What a perfect way to finish up this chat. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, Eden. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Thanks for joining me on Coffee Clients and Nap Time. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another mum who's ready to build their dream life. You can also join our Facebook page or Instagram to stay connected every day of the week. The link is in the show notes. Just remember, you've got this, and I'm here to help every step of the way.